Houston Cougars football recruiting, because the last time we talked about the Houston Cougars football team, it was off the heels of the Independence Bowl and their victory over Louisiana way back when. Now, it's going to be a very different team because, of course, that team, especially from just top to bottom on both sides of the ball, you think about offense, the two biggest catalysts that kind of made the entire offense run, Clayton Tune and Tank Dell, they will no longer be a part of the Houston Cougars program, as they both look for professional NFL careers. And then, of course, on the defensive side, with multiple key pieces from DeAnthony Jones, Derek Parrish, who obviously his 22-year was cut short. And even in the secondary, which the veterans at the secondaries did have, a lot of them are heading towards going pro. So now we're looking into 2023. Of course, the biggest headline is it's going to be the first year for the Houston Cougars in the Big 12. And since then, there's been a lot of movement. And Dan, I'll toss it over to you, but I think the biggest eye grabber, at least from a broader perspective, and this is the most important because of the position that it's the quarterback position and the commit that Houston was able to get in Texas Tech transfer, who Cougar fans know very well from last season, Donovan Smith, who he committed to joining the Houston Cougars football program for 2023.
Yeah, that's a obvious need is depth at the quarterback position, and what they bring in with Smith, someone not only with experience but Big 12 experience, and still a relatively young player. And so I'm excited to welcome him into the program and see what he can do. Been a bit inconsistently in his time at Texas Tech, struggled with turnovers, but you talk strictly athleticism and talent. He can make all the throws. He's a dual threat, can run with his legs and do it inside the pocket. So I think he'll fit well into the system. But I think for me, one of the biggest gets was some of the skill position players that we were able to get. Talking about Mikael Harrison Pilot, the 4-star recruit receiver that we were able to get. He announced his decision at the Under Armour All-American game, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of the huge surprises to me. But, of course, the quarterback position, because you need someone to get him the ball consistently. So I can't wait for Smith to get in and see if he can win the job, because it's going to be a competition between him and Lucas Coley.
Right, and that's an interesting conversation to have, because when you look at Donovan Smith, and like I said, Houston fans, they know him very well because of what he was able to do against the Cougars this past season. And really, I think it's what we were able to see in that game is a reason why he is transferring out of Texas Tech. He fell out of that starting spot with the Red Raiders as the season progressed. Now, in that game in particular against the Cougars in and of itself, it was kind of a microcosm because he had positives, he had negatives, and specifically when it comes to him, it was the turnovers that really allowed Houston. I mean, really, those turnovers should have been what made Houston be able to close out the game and come out with a victory. It always goes back to that 4th and 20, but we'll leave it at that. But then when it was overtime, to take advantage, Texas Tech did convert that 4th and 20, and a big reason why that was because Donovan Smith was able to take advantage of the Houston Cougars defense, but then he made the big play at the end to walk it off for the Red Raiders. So again, going into this season, you can imagine a big reason why he's joining the program is he believes in the vision that he was sold by Dana Holgorsen and that offensive staff to kind of help him progress into becoming that next level quarterback, because his goal is to make it to the NFL. Now, obviously, of course, Lucas Coley, he's been under the Dana Holgorsen program for a year now, and similar situation for him. He's a transfer who came from Arkansas a season ago, and he has that year of experience under his belt, and potentially the Houston Cougars could be looking to add another quarterback that's not yet on the roster. But Dana Holgorsen said in December, prior to the Independence Bowl, he said they're going to be looking hard for a quarterback in the transfer portal, which was Donovan Smith, who they ended up getting. But then he said in a perfect world, they potentially could add 2 quarterbacks from the transfer. So Smith is one. Not yet sure if they will land another one, but I think the most important thing, and something that we've touched on in the past, I'm not entirely sure if we've done it live on a show. It might be just a conversation we had. That's something that hasn't been the case under Dana Holgorsen, is there's an actual quarterback competition.
Yeah, you're right about that. It really hasn't been a competition. And I think this is the first one. I think it's going to be a healthy competition. And I think it's Lucas Coley's job to lose. Not only does he have the head up as far as experience within the system, he has a year up. But also, I think with him kind of being in place to be the person who um, be as the quarterback after Clayton leaves, I think it's his job to lose. I think he's going to have to play his way out of a starting job, or Donovan Smith can actually outplay him throughout the offseason and earn that job. But either way, it's a healthy competition, and may the best man win. I think competition, iron sharpens iron. So they say that each quarterback's come in and compete. It's going to be earned, but they're going to have a plethora of receivers, although they be young, but they're going to have a lot of talent on the outside. And I think for Smith and Coley, one of the I have, of course, they haven't told us this, but outside looking in, I think coming to Houston, not only do you have a chance to start, but you have a chance to be a part of something of a resurgence of a program. Especially going into the Big 12. I think that's a huge deal because if you can play well, Houston has success. I mean, you can literally kind of be at the forefront of that at the quarterback position. And so not only how offensive friendly or quarterback friendly is the system, I think what Houston's been able to do around them, the city, and the lack of success will make quarterbacks want to come here and see if they can be the one to help turn this thing around.
And I think it's interesting to note when going way back in December, again, about the second week of December, when Houston, the Cougars men's basketball team played Alabama, the Houston football team had a lot of recruits to watch that game. And I mean a lot of recruits. And again, like you said, I would hope, again, this is not us having insider information or anything. This is speculating from an outside perspective, the kind of division that's being sold. Just look at what the Cougars men's basketball team was able to do. Kelvin Sampson was able to build something from really the ground up. There was nothing in place when it came to the men's basketball team. They were able to build it up to where it's a nationally relevant powerhouse when it comes to men's basketball. And there's support from the fans. There's, again, the level where the football team was able to be at between 2014 and 2016. There's a blueprint is there for what this program could look like if it's hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the vision that's being sold. Now, when it comes to the topic of the Houston Cougars football team in particular, and those commits and or signees that are looking ahead for the 2023 season, when it comes to the transfer portal, which is something that Dana Holgorsen and his staff have relatively done a decent job in since he's taken over the program here at Houston, they've gotten a couple of not big names, but four-star recruits that are coming from powerhouse programs, in particular in the state of Texas when it comes to Texas and Texas A&M. And the two that are the most noteworthy are four-star when it comes to, and this is according to on3.com, obviously depending on what type of recruiting site or whatever is your go-to 24/7 sports rivals, they all kind of hover. They're a little bit different here and there, but according to On3, he's a four-star recruit transferring over from the University of Texas. Jalen Garth, who's an offensive tackle, which, again, going back to upfront and something that Dana Holgorsen mentioned throughout the entire 2022 season, when it comes to the battle in the trenches, that's going to be huge for Houston. That's going to be probably the biggest area that is of need for Houston heading into the Big 12, and something that we saw against Texas Tech and Kansas, where, especially that Kansas game, the Jayhawks just abused the Cougars in the battle in the trenches because those were those Power 5 recruits, and you could that's where you could physically see the difference. Where nothing against the Houston Cougars offensive linemen, but that you could tell that there was a difference from there, especially in that Kansas Jayhawks game, even on the other side, because the Jayhawks were able to run all over the Cougars. They were able to run down their throat.
Yeah, but honestly, I think the offensive line probably be a strength of Houston going into the Big 12, being some of the players that they have on that offensive line not only got a chance to compete at the Big 12 level, but one of them transferred from Texas, and they got other recruits that you just mentioned transferred in. But not only that, they're going to have chemistry. They're going to have cohesiveness. And that's something the offensive line really hasn't had in years past in bringing back returning players with chemistry all together. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. I think the offensive line going to the Big 12 should be the strength of one of the strengths of the team in regards to having experience and having that chemistry together. Now competing against higher level athletes or better athletes potentially on a week to week basis is something to be keep an eye on and consider. But I think the offensive line has gotten better throughout the season, and I think they will continue to do that. But the skill positions is what Houston really honed in on, and also the defensively, they got a linebacker. Ish Smith came over from Texas A&M, another Texas kid, and most of these recruits that they've gotten transfers or high schools have been in the state of Texas. So we got to give kudos to Coach Holgorsen, Doug Belk, and their entire staff for honing in on the state, because we know how much talent leaves the state of Texas. And for them to retain some of that talent, whether it's the transfer portal or at the high school, they've done an outstanding job, because you got players like Jacoby Banks, wide receiver, another young wide receiver was coming in who I think has a potential to make an immediate impact. And you got players returning like Matthew Golden, who I think will take their next step. And so recruiting in state, and also thinking about it, I think TCU should inspire not only Houston, but Houston fans, because you see they were like the middle pack of the Big 12 until this past season. And so you kind of look at what they were able to do in the blueprint they were able to set as far as honing in on recruiting Texas and kind of just putting it all together. I think Houston fans should feel optimistic going into the Big 12 that Houston they're getting a ton of talent. You see the recruiting, you see the outside noise, but it goes back into, I guess, expectations. That's something Holgorsen talks about, expectations. Yeah. So I don't want to put expectations on them with the outside, but I just think it only can go up going into the Big 12. I don't think it can be any worse than it is right now. So I think people should be optimistic for Houston going into the Big 12.
When it comes to those skills position, I think the biggest acquisition that they're going to have too is when it comes to the running back, who they just missed for the entire season in Alton McCaskill, who obviously, of course, he made a big difference going back to the 2021 season. So that in and of itself, that's going to be a huge spark to the offense for Houston. And, it's going to be interesting to see it, like you said, regardless of who's leading Houston from the quarterback position, it's going to be a new person. It's not going to be Clayton Tune, who's been in charge of the program for the past 3 seasons. So it's going to be a learning curve for whoever that play caller is. But like you said, if they have playmakers at skills positions, especially what they're really doing from that running back perspective, which again, going back to something Holgorsen has mentioned, reiterated throughout the season, is that at that position specifically, he likes to have as many bodies as possible, because like we saw this season with Tajon Henry, with Stacey Sneed, with Brandon Campbell, they get injured. And it's a lot of toll that gets put on their bodies through the course of the season. Now they're stepping up in competition every game after the non-conference slate is going to be against a Power 5 opponent in a Big 12 schedule. So it's going to be much more wear and tear on their bodies. But if you have playmakers at the running back, at receiver, tight end, that'll be an interesting position to see what they do. They can have a reliable playmaker. Christian Trahan, getting into the season, that is going to be one of those reliable playmakers. At the beginning of the season, it didn't really seem like they were able to utilize him. Now, it potentially could have been an injury or something that was keeping him out, and then his kind of role increased and then decreased. That's going to be an interesting position going into 2023. Now, before we wrap up this segment on Houston Cougars football team, Dan, is there anything else you'd like to add, whether it be on the recruits or maybe one of the returning players, whether it be Matt Golden or anything else on the defensive side, potentially too, that we haven't touched on as well, that could be interesting to watch from a Houston Cougars football perspective?
I just think a lot of young players on defensively got a lot of playing time towards the end of the season that will help them not only going into the offseason, but going into next year. Jalen Emery, some of the linebackers. And really, I'm keeping my eye on the defensive line, how they retool and restock the defensive line. I know there are a couple of players in the pipeline that Houston coaches and staff are really high on, but I want to see them actually make their name and see if they continue that tradition of Sac Avenue and having really good defensive linemen. But offensively, of course, it all starts with the quarterback. I can't want to see Lucas Coley or Donovan Smith, but I want to see Lucas Coley because he was in the program. Not that I hope he wins the job. I hope the best man wins the job, but I just want to see what he's like because I've seen Donovan Smith, so I know what he can bring. And also the skill positions, man. Houston's going to be loaded at receiver and the running back group, like you just mentioned. They're going to have 3 really good running backs. I think it's going to be a running back by committee, led by, of course, Alton McCaskill. And so I think the future was looking dim during the season, but I think now it's looking kind of bright at the end of that tunnel for Houston going into the Big 12.